It's a cool story. And it starts with me going to school in handcuffs and actually leaving on an ambulance gurney. This is actually the one time in my life where I really, truly tried to kill myself. To be honest, I'm not even sure if I had planned to take my life that day. I think it all began when I started arguing with my dad. You know, I was feeling all fucked up from meth and I didn't want to go to school. And when he had forced me to go to school, pretty sure I got very, very emotional. That I remember, I was crying a lot. So what happened was that I had these pills on me. But what you should know is that they were sleeping pills, about this size. It's really small, looked like the size of a Tic Tac. But in the past, I had taken one of those and I remember going to school while on it and just having trouble walking because my body was like just wanting to not function, or I guess it wanted to go to sleep. On that day I had realized how powerful that little drug was. Those same pills that I've had prior experience with, well, shit, on that day I took roughly 16 or 20 of them. And I basically filled up the palm of my hand, and I remember crying a lot. And I had walked out and I went straight to the back of the house. That day I had Marilyn Manson playing on a CD player, and the song was Minute of Decay. It's a song about death. So what I did was I put that song on repeat and just waited for the end to come. It didn't. What happened was the cop came. Eventually the cops just said, "Hey, we're gonna take you to school." So they put me in handcuffs and took me to school. So now that I have all this shit in me, they had put me in the principal's office. Students, the last thing I wanted basically was to end my life at school. I didn't want to be seen as searching for attention. I didn't want to be seen as the guy that did it for attention. That really, really bothered me. It went against the plan that I originally had, which was to slip out of this life unseen or unheard or unknown. I guess it makes it look more legit. I don't know, but for sure. So then I told the lady at the time, the desk lady at the time, like, "Hey, I need you to call an ambulance. I think I'm gonna die right now." So she says, "Okay." And that fucking lady, I guess she didn't take me seriously, because what she ended up doing was actually locking me in the principal's office. When I was in there, it was empty. So again, I feel myself slipping away. And the last thing I remember was pounding on the door of the office, because when I tried to open it, it wouldn't. It locked me in. I just start pounding and pounding on the door, and I said, "Listen, you fucking lady, I'm gonna die in here if you don't call somebody. This isn't a joke." And then I passed out. So they had rolled up my fishnets, and on one side right here is the principal, and on the other side is the ambulance guy. He's rolling up my sleeves to probably pop in the IV or something. So the next time I open my eyes, I'm laid out on the gurney, being carried away. So I'm being hauled out. Lucky for me, class is still in session because the hallways were pretty empty. And then I knock out again. This time when I open my eyes, I'm already inside the ambulance, hooked up to the IV. Some guy sitting right there, and pass out again. This time, I wake up in a bed. It's in the night. Tilt my head up. I see that there's two beds on the opposite side. And all I could think to myself was, shit, this is a fancy hospital. I knocked out for the rest of that night. I wake up, there's two other dudes there. I didn't really talk to them or anything, and I just remember I finally hit the hallway, and just about 4 other rooms from my room to reach this living room, which wasn't really a living room, it was just a room with a TV, and there's like 10 other, actually 8 other guys in there. My memory is pretty sketchy from this point, but I do remember one guy saying, "Hey look guys, Yu-Gi-Oh's awake." He had called me Yu-Gi-Oh because at the time, not only was my hair covered up to here, but I had tried to achieve this Edward Scissorhands look, but this guy called it Yu-Gi-Oh. Anyways, I'm mingling with these dudes, and I find out that I'm in a suicidal rehabilitation center. And I can't just leave. I found out that I'm forced to be there for 72 hours. So, it was a really shitty feeling. And I won't lie, having to be on a schedule of when to eat and when to sleep, like a little girl, I cried again. And I remember telling myself, I can't imagine what it's like to be in prison or in jail, because I could barely stand not having any freedom in here. And I was fiending from not having the meth, and I was fiending from not having any cigarettes. It was really, really hard. About some of the people in there, well, there was one guy I remember who had a scab on his neck, and it looked to me like he tried to cut himself right there. And there was another guy who had charcoal stains all over his white shirt. And this is the guy that called me Yu-Gi-Oh, but we ended up getting along. He's a really cool guy. Apparently what had happened to him was he had laid out in front of on the train tracks and just overdosed on whatever it was that he did, or maybe he drank himself to blackout point, but he laid there after being on whatever he was on, and he was waiting for the train to run him over. And lucky for him, it didn't happen. And there was another guy in there. So we had the living room, and out of nowhere there seemed to be like this sort of isolation room. One night, they opened the door and they let him out. And he leaves his room, he makes a quick turn to the left. And what they did was they unwrapped his bandages. And I remember they poured a whole bottle of isopropyl alcohol over both of his wrists. So apparently that's how deep he had cut himself. And when that was done, they rewrapped it and put him back in that little isolation room. But then I met a really nice guy over there. And this guy had a cast over his right arm from here all the way to here. But his left arm was exposed. And I'll never forget what I saw. One of the craziest things I've ever seen. It looked like he had a leech or a worm on his arm. And that's how bad he had cut himself, from here all the way to here. And apparently that's what happened to his other arm too, that was still healing. And I remember he asked me, "So are you gonna try again?" I lied, and I told him of course. And then when I had asked him, "Are you gonna try again?" he said in his soft toned voice, "Yeah, but this time I'm gonna burn myself." I'm thinking to myself, holy shit, this guy is for real. I was forced to be in there, mandatory 72 hours is what they said. So on the third day, when my parents finally came, they had to consult the therapist, the counselor, the doctor, whoever it was. And I remember being in the room with that person, my parents, and myself. And I remember that guy telling my parents that I should be in there longer. Thank God that they disagreed with him. And they got me out. So that's that.